Welcome back to Fandom Empire Live, everybody. It's Monday evening, about 9:30 p.m. Eastern here. We got a little bit of a different show for you this evening. We'll be back live at our normal time tomorrow evening, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, where we will be talking about some similar things, but very thrilled to be joined this evening, not by just one of the gentlemen from IPC, but both. But first up, man, myth, legend, guy behind Zach the Voice, guy behind Zap, co-host of the Legacy of Westeros. It's Mr. Zach Arnold. What's going on, man?
Man, that is way too kind of an introduction. Don't know if you can hear me. I'm still having some mixer issues here. Are you
Uh,
picking me up?
yeah, I got you loud and clear. You're good.
Okay. I'm not picking myself up. That's weird. I don't think that's ever happened before. But as long as you guys have got me, that's what is important. Really appreciate the intro. Really appreciate you having me on. And yeah, you alluded to another really awesome guest that's going to be coming in down the pipe as well. It's shaping up for what could be a really fun conversation. So I'm excited all around the board.
Yeah, there's a few topics for tonight's show. At the very tail end, I'm going to bring up a Halloween topic that I think you can help us with more than a lot of people can that are normally on this channel. Um, but I see Ben is in the green room, so I'm just going to ask him if we can put into the private chat if it's better for him if we start with Star Wars now, or if he's good with waiting 15, 20 minutes and us getting to him and doing the Game of Thrones movie first. Just let us know in the private chat. We can do either or, Ben. Um, yeah, I gotta say, man, not to sound corny, but I got the holiday cheer. I know that it's so easy to maybe not like, certain things that have gone on in the world over the last, not just week or two, but several months. Um, and I don't know what it is. Maybe just because when I was a kid, um, Christmas was always like the one time a year where my family wasn't trying to kill one another. So, uh, um, it was just enjoyable times, and I've tried to instill that in my kids too. And we try to do more at this time of year, despite it being, colder up here. But I like we're already watching Christmas movies. I'm already not wanting to wait to put the tree up. I understand that I don't have the Thanksgiving in between Halloween and Christmas like you guys do. Ours comes before
Right,
that, so
right.
you guys have a whole other holiday crammed in there before there. But I don't know. I just been so filled with nostalgia, and I'll talk about a nostalgia bit right before Ben gets on. We're gonna start with Game of Thrones, so. But I don't know, just feeling cheery, full of nostalgia, and there's 100 billion reasons that we could have a shitty frown on our face and be frustrated, but I'm choosing to be, things could always be worse guy tonight. We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, I mean, there's always glasses half empty people, there's glasses half full people, and then there's um people that look at the glass and say, "Why does the drink look like piss?" So you can choose to be one of three people, and I'm glad that's the one you're choosing. I think I'm kind of in a similar boat. My wife is very into spooky season, so we had ghosts and pumpkins and spiders and stuff like that up all over the house, and we just switched it out for cornucopias and pumpkins that don't have faces carved into them, and went and bought some candles at Bath and Body Works that are very gingerbread house type smelling and things like that. So um, we're getting into that season as well, and it is an interesting contrast looking at going from Halloween. You've got about a 2 week, 3 week gap until Thanksgiving comes around, and then you turn right around and you're doing Christmas stuff right after that. Um, I'm in favor of kind of merging a couple of holidays just so that you get them all in. because if I spend all this time celebrating Thanksgiving, and it takes away time to be celebrating Christmas, which is probably my favorite holiday. So um, I too have a lot of great memories from those times, and I'm looking forward to possibly making more in the weeks to come. So um, tis the season, tis the season to make festive drinks and give gifts and enjoy company, and I'm excited for all of that. You're muted, buddy.
Our mutual friend and member of the channel, Tommy B, was talking about, how soon is too soon to start celebrating Christmas, and
I saw
like
that.
it didn't really hit me right away that it's like, right, like you guys have another very significant holiday with the way you guys treat Thanksgiving down there that is sandwiched in between the two, right? Where, like for us up here, you can kind of go from Halloween into, Christmas is,
Straight into Christmas.
almost
Yeah.
2 months of it, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. With us, it's the third or fourth Thursday of Thanksgiving, something like that. Or of November. One, two, three. It's the fourth Thursday of November. So there's no set day. It's just a random Thursday. And I'm going to be taking that Friday off of work probably because usually they ask us to come in, but it's like, hey, we're taking off Thursday. And then I'm not working that Saturday and I'm not on call that Sunday. Why am I coming in for just one day of work? So I am looking forward to that extended weekend. That's usually when my dad will put up the um, Christmas lights and things like that. And that's a big tradition in my family is kind of decorating the halls the way Clark Griswold does. Big thing of lights out front and a lot of trees and stuff like that. So he usually tries to get that in like the day after Thanksgiving is over. As soon as one holiday's over, boom, he's like set up for the next one. So things are going to be really festive around my family for sure.
that's good, man. I think it's important to dive into all that and find a little bit of escapism and this thing that we call life. Yes, talking Star Wars. R.I.P. to the late great Tony Todd, aka Candyman. We lost him over the weekend, and we're going to talk a little bit about Tony Todd on tomorrow's show. And I actually have a Tony Todd memory I want to share with people that's not from a horror movie. So be on the lookout for that on tomorrow's
The
show.
the best thing I remember Tony Todd from, I'm a Trekkie as well, and he was in several episodes of different Star Trek shows. Um, Most notably, season 4, episode 2 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, titled The Visitor. It's considered one of the most iconic DS9 episodes of the entire series. Tony Todd plays a grown up Jake Sisko that is trying to look for his dad. And it is a heartfelt but also gut wrenching episode. He gives a fantastic performance in that. So that's what I know him from, and that's how I'm gonna honor his memory is by going back and watching that episode. Haven't seen Candyman. There's a lot of his stuff that I haven't seen, but I do know him from Deep Space Nine. So he is gonna be missed by the Trek community as well.
That's awesome, man. Well said. But yeah, if you want to reminisce more about Tony Todd, then feel free to come out to tomorrow's show. Not that you can't
Do it tomorrow.
in
Don't do it today. We don't have
in
time for that
today's
shit.
channel. But yeah, we'll have a whole segment on that. So dude, James Hibbard, who is for my money the biggest, most accurate Game of Thrones insider there is, simply because he's the guy they
Outside
give
of us,
everything to. So when it's coming from him, it's usually ironclad. And there is a Game of Thrones movie in early development, and the two leading candidates seem to be something after the events of the TV series or Robert's Rebellion. Your thoughts on one? Obviously, we're big Game of Thrones fans here. Um, it's really easy to maybe look at it with rose-colored glasses and be a little bit biased for it. But can it work on the big screen? Like clearly, WBD's approaching this from we need some wins here and we need some money, and it's still a big transition even for a franchise like Game of Thrones to go from the small screen to the big screen. So, what do you think the odds are of them being successful, and which of those two routes would you rather them go?
Well, here's the deal. We have been talking about House of the Dragon on the Legacy of Westeros, and we have been looking into just how far that series can go. There's some talk that the stuff surrounding Rhaenyra may not be the only storyline that gets covered in House of the Dragon. By giving it that title, you can talk about any part of House Targaryen and their entire lineage because they are the House of the Dragon. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility in there. And I definitely think we could see House of the Dragon finish up whenever it decides to finish up. And the place where it tails off is not at the end of Rhaenyra's storyline, but where it can curtail directly into what happens in Robert's Rebellion. I think you can end House of the Dragon later in the story of the Targaryens, and you can have characters, you can have even actors transition from the show to the movie if you wanted to kind of put the two franchises together. And I could definitely see from a logistical and cohesive storytelling point of view doing a Robert's Rebellion movie that follows events that transpired in House of the Dragon. They can do it in such a way where you don't necessarily have to watch House of the Dragon in order to appreciate the movie, but it would help. There's a lot of TV shows and movies. Marvel has done a great job of that, even all the way back to like Agents of Shield. There's an episode in one of the early seasons of Agents of Shield where they say, "No doubt this is the situation. Call in the Avengers." Blah blah blah, and it ties directly into Age of Ultron when the Avengers are headed to Sokovia, I think it is, to intervene out there. So, like, you could do something like that where you can incorporate stuff that's already been established, but doesn't have to be reliant on it in order for people to go to the movies and see it. I think there's enough people out there that want to see Robert's Rebellion. There's enough interest in it as it is that people would go and watch it just for that. But if you can find a way to tie House of the Dragon into it as well, then you get a 2-for-1. So that's kind of the direction I'm leaning. But I also think I'm leaning that way selfishly because I think you need more than 3 hours to tell what happens after the events of season 8. That's basically 3 episodes. If you make a 3 hour long movie, it's basically 3 episodes. That's not even a full season. That's not even a half a season of storytelling to fit into a movie format. So out of those two options, I would rather see Robert's Rebellion, and I just think it's more logistically reasonable.
Yeah, I think a lot of that makes sense. I agree with you in terms of the handling anything post, Game of Thrones. A sequel to it should probably be done in TV format. That being said, a lot of people want to see stuff either added to it and or changed, as we see in the chat there.
Yep.
Um, and you're not going to get like a remake of season 7 and 8. It's just not going to happen. But a continuation that changes, parts of the story is certainly possible. The only thing I'm thinking is they might not view it as one movie to clean up, post Game of Thrones season 8 or do a sequel. They may view it the first of 7 or 8 movies, kind of like the Harry Potter series, where they're all the length of the Batman and almost 3 hours long. And they're definitely thinking financial matters here. And as good as TV is, you can always make more at the box office if you're successful. If you're not, you can also bury your franchise.
Hmm.
So it's definitely one of the worries I have for Star Wars too. Like you can be the most positive Star Wars fan in the world, or you can be the most negative one. There hasn't been a movie since 2019 that is pre-COVID, that is pre the industry changing and what the industry standard is. I would not want to be the person who has to guess today what the Mandalorian and Grogu's going to make in May of 26 because I have no idea. It could make 1 billion, it could make 400 million. I honestly don't know. And I feel the same about Game of Thrones. We think that it should be a hit, but it doesn't mean that it will. If they go and spend with Robert's Rebellion, they can spend less money. I'll say that. They can spend less money and the turnaround can be quicker. If you're doing something post season 8 and it involves Macy Williams, what's west of Westeros, you're probably going heavy fantasy, Lord of the Rings type stuff if you're going over there, so that it's a visual spectacle on screen. Where Robert's Rebellion, the turnaround on it can be quick. There are no dragons, right? Doesn't mean that the special effects aren't going to take time either. But I think they can do it cheaper. They can do it more affordable. Frankly, it's the one that I think fits a 1 or 2 3-hour time slots better if they're going to do 1 or 2 movies on it. And even though you'd have a bunch of new people playing the characters, you're still returning to a group of characters that, for the most part, we all know and a lot of people love. And again, though, in terms of being successful, I have no idea. The box office is so hard to predict.
Nah, man, I say bring Sean Bean back. Let him do it. Just put some of that Harrison Ford de-aging technology on him and let him have a win for once. We know what his fate's going to be, 17, 18 years from now, but let him win a war. Let him have a happy day for once. Sean Bean deserves it.
They just kill him off anyway.
Just
There's
finds a
your
way to die,
change.
and we find out it's some clone that the Red Sisters created in order to make everybody believe that the Lord of Winterfell is still alive. Yeah,
We shouldn't have
they would do.
touched it.
Yeah, they would do something like that. Of course they will.
We're going to be bringing Mr. Benjamin Hart on here very shortly from the Star Wars Underworld and the IPC podcast. Um, what do you make of George R. R. Martin needing to meet up with Macy Williams to discuss a project? I think no brainer. It's Game of Thrones.
Well, he's not really attached to anything else, is he? Like that's pretty much the only thing he's working on, isn't it?
He's got some hands in video game stuff. Like he was involved in what's that big video game that came out? It's like an RPG. It's been out for a couple years now. Elden Ring or something like that.
Mm.
He's got involvement in that, but um, like to me, it just seems like this has Arya Stark written all over it.
I mean, it kind of has to be when it's this public and when it's those two people that are just that associated with the franchise. It's just really, really hard to picture anything else. Um, they left us wondering what's west of Westeros, and that is definitely something that I've been intrigued about. It sounds very much in the vein of like Voyage of the Dawn Treader from the Narnia series. You know where Narnia is, you know where Arkenland is, you know where a few other mainstays are just kind of around the land of Narnia, but you don't really know what's out there in the water. You don't know what's out in the ocean and what's beyond. And if you just keep heading towards the sun, what else are you going to find? And that was kind of the impression I got when I found out she was going to go west of Westeros. Everybody goes east to Essos, but nobody really goes west. And so if that is the direction they're going, I will be one of the first people to buy a ticket because it's new, it's different, it's adventurous, it's world building, it's lore building, it's character building. It is everything I want from the Game of Thrones universe. So I'm on board if that's what they're trying to do. If they're trying to like mysteriously bring her back to star in the movie trilogy, like she went, she explored, she can tell people about it, but we don't actually get to see it, then I'll be a little bit pissed. But if we actually get to see it, then I'm on board for it. But I don't want any of that crap where she like went adventuring, comes back and tells everybody about it, and she becomes the lead of a show in parts of Westeros that we're already familiar with. I think exploring the world and exploring herself is a much better use of her character.
I completely agree. Whether it's from a movie perspective let's approach it as if it was from a TV perspective. Um, that is probably one of the most cost sufficient ways in terms of cast to get around doing a sequel to Game of Thrones. Here, we need Macy Williams, and now we need a bunch of new people because
A
theoretically you could
supporting cast.
involve
Yeah.
yeah, you could involve no one else. And
Hmm.
then if it's successful, season three, maybe you go back to King's Landing and, Arya sent word she needs help or something. And, a small group of characters we know have to go and get involved in the story. It's probably the most financially effective way to do it, even if it's not the thing that we desire most as fans. But we live in a world now in terms of Hollywood productions and things getting to the finish line. Everybody picks on Star Wars, but there's so many other, franchises with stalled and canceled projects. It's like you just never know if you're going to get it, and you have to look at the business side of it too if you're going to invest any thought into it. But uh,
Absolutely.
we'll have to wait and see what happens. Zach and I will officially announce now that we are putting the Game of Thrones rewatch on hold until January. It's just really busy between now and Christmas. Obviously, they have Thanksgiving down there. We're both working. We want to do some other fun stuff. We want to do pop up streams like this.
You come from a land down under.
And yeah, so let's without further ado, let's bring in our next guest.
You.
Uh
To you and you and you.
he is from the Star Wars underworld. We used to refer to him as the caveman. He's also the co-host at IPC, Mr. Ben Hart. What's going on, buddy?
How's it going, everybody? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we got
Wait,
you good.
this is weird. We haven't even scheduled this month's IPC episode, and you're on here now.
I know. So, you want to schedule it right now? I don't know. Let's not.
I was
do it
about to say, let me pull out my phone and be like, when are you free?
It's not the
Well, I
appropriate
have
time
you.
for a production meeting.
Yeah. While I've got you, how does next Tuesday look?
Oh my god.
So
How's it going, guys?
It's going. I was telling Zach at the beginning of the show, I'm like so, I don't think I'm crazy, cheerful, but I have that holiday cheer. Up here in Canada, we don't have Thanksgiving before Christmas. Ours is already passed, so like we go from spooky Halloween into it's Christmas.
Which is basically how it happens down here. In America is kind of becoming an invisible holiday. It's just like, it's like Halloween, and the next day, it's like you're seeing Christmas commercials on TV. It's just like, okay, nobody cares about Thanksgiving.
Down here in Texas, you'll see the Christmas trees in the seasonal section at Walmart and Hobby Lobby by like September.
Oh yeah,
it's wild.
Yeah.
I was listening to a old episode of Star Wars Wastelands the other day while driving.
That's a throwback.
Yeah, 2015, and it would have been September, I believe. And Mondo is on there, and Ben's on there too. But Mondo's going on about how a bunch of people got the stupid expensive BB-8 that hooks up to your phone and
the Sphero
drive around. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, man, I haven't heard of anybody having those things in years. I haven't seen one in years. Like, did the software keep up? Was it worth the $200 or whatever it was for it?
I never bought one because I could see it as something. It was like a toy that I would like. Oh, I'll play with this for like 5 minutes and then get bored with it. So I can't justify the price for like. It's like it's really cool. It's really cool. I mean, they're still cool. They came with a BB-9E. I mean, like there was a lot. It was a really cool thing, but it didn't. The BB-8 craze died out pretty quick. So.
Yeah. So.
Are you saying there's a lot of BB hate right now?
I don't know. It depends on who you talk to, I suppose.
So I try to not get too excited about Star Wars news, simply because, as we were talking about earlier, you don't know when something's going to happen and when it's not going to happen. So I often get frustrated with myself when something gets me and gets me excited. It's like, fuck! Because you don't know. Like, you might see it, you might not see it. And that's not like a how dare they. It's just there's so many things going on over there that are either still going on or not going on anymore. And we don't know about it. And so, like, announcing another movie trilogy, not that they announced it, it was reported first by Deadline, and then basically everybody under the sun followed it up. But I just want to get like want to check the temperature of the room here before I tell a little story. How's everyone feeling? Like just initial thoughts on them, and well, not again. They didn't announce, but from all the
So many
trades,
hypotheticals here.
a,
They
a
pretend that they hypothetically said that this is supposedly happening in this not too distant future.
well, sorry, Simon Kinberg did confirm it.
Right? Yeah, he did.
So he did confirm it, and if it's not true and he's confirming it, well, I got bad news for Simon.
He responded to, he like posted a screenshot to his Instagram saying, I'm doing something. He didn't say like, oh yeah, I'm writing episodes 10, 11, 12. Like he didn't say anything like that. He just like, hey, there's something happening and I'm working on it. So like, we know that. We know Simon Kinberg is doing something.
Yeah. Star Wars related too.
Right.
I hate it because like there's a bunch of names they could have announced and I would not have been excited. And I know Simon Kinberg's being met with like I don't think people are like gun ho about it, but I also don't think it's the Titanic. But I feel like in nowadays people jump to the first negative thing they can find.
Oh
and
yeah.
and like so Simon Kinberg, the first thing that's gonna come up is well, Dark Phoenix was terrible because it was the first movie he ever directed. And let's ignore the fact he's an executive producer on all the Deadpool movies and
Right.
and
Yeah,
wrote
exactly.
Days of Future Past and This Means War and a bunch of other great flicks. I actually really like the Simon Kinberg thing, and also he often gets discredited a bit in terms of his contributions to Star Wars Rebels because of how much it's really Filoni's baby, right?
I had forgotten how many episodes he wrote, and all the episodes that he wrote are freaking great. Like, so you can't. He's just one of these guys that he's not the most in front of the camera glamorous types. And yes, he's made some bad stuff, but he's also made a lot of good stuff. And he's someone who's a producer, which is a lot of people don't even know like what a producer does, much less if they're famous. Like if you're people can name like, oh, Kathleen Kennedy. What other famous producers are there? Like they're generally it's a nebulous kind of thing. But he's someone who has a lot of really great accomplishments, and I think a lot of accomplishments with Star Wars, particularly that I think should be recognized.
I believe he was a consultant on The Force Awakens too.
Yeah, I think so.
There were a lot of people that were consultants on Force Awakens.
A lot of past writers too. Zach, how about you, man? I know where you stand in general in terms of Star Wars, and a lot of people having I don't say the love beat out of you, but like you want to see the thing in production before you assume it's happening. But does Simon Kinberg at all excite you if this thing gets done?
For the longest time, the only Simon I knew was the one from America's Got Talent. So when I heard Simon was attached to a Star Wars project, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be great," and then it turned out to be the wrong Simon. And so I did get a little excited when I looked up his filmography, and that's something that you kind of have to do these days. You have to do your research in order to truly get excited about something, because if it's not a name like Filoni or Spielberg or something like that, then you're just like, I don't know how excited I'm supposed to get about this. By the way, Jack Schaefer has done a fantastic job with Marvel Television lately. Agatha was a great series and did a great job with WandaVision as well. But that's that's like one of those few times where like a name is able to like stand out on its own because of recent success. Kinberg, as both of you have alluded to, is not somebody that likes to stand in the spotlight. And so you really have to do a little digging. You have to do a little research. But Fire Across the Galaxy is the season finale of season 1 of Star Wars Rebels, and that has a really big fight scene in it, and it reveals Ahsoka's identity as Fulcrum, which was a big part of the season 1 storyline, and that was something that he wrote. And he wrote several other pieces as well, as Ben was talking about. He was part of Twilight of the Apprentice. He was
Yep.
part of Family Reunion and Farewell. And
Did he do Spark
so
of the Rebellion
uh,
too? Like the initial
I
movie?
believe yes, he did. Yes.
I believe so, yeah. And so there's a lot that he contributed to make that show a success. I wouldn't say Rebels was necessarily my cup of tea. There were parts that I enjoyed, but the quality that he put forth in those episodes is definitely noticeable. And so the thing that is most appealing to me about Kinberg is he's got a proven track record with Lucasfilm. And I'm sure this is something that other podcasts and other discussions have brought up as well. Ben, I know y'all touched on this heavily in last week's episode. Um, but Kinberg has experience working with the pressures of performing at a place like Disney, at a place like Lucasfilm. There are certain standards and certain expectations that some people, like Dave Filoni, can meet with flying colors. And then there are other people like Colin Trevorrow who wants to take it a certain direction. Disney pumps the brakes and says, I don't know if that's really the direction we want to go with it. And the next thing you know, you're looking for another director for the finale of your trilogy. And it's fine. You know, Trevorrow had his own way of doing things. Filoni has his own way of doing things. Kinberg is going to have his own way of doing things. But the way that he does it seems to be, from what I can tell, seems to be in harmony with the way that Disney and Lucasfilm wants things done right now. So that alone gives me a little bit of hope for some stability with this trilogy that was definitely lacking in the previous trilogy that was created. If he's attached to those projects and he's able to give stability that was lacking in previous mass movie distributions from that franchise, then I am on board. Tentatively, but I'm on board.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, man. The biggest, most attractive thing about this, in my opinion, and it's almost unfortunate that we have to say this, but is the fact that he has worked in the Lucasfilm system, the Disney system, worked with Dave Filoni, worked with Kathleen Kennedy, worked under Bob Iger, worked with Carrie Beck, who I believe is still a part of the story group. Um, so like he's worked with all these people. The projects have gotten delivered on time. And yeah, he was just a consultant on The Force Awakens, but I do remember him being in some of those earlier videos they were doing that had uh, J.J. Abrams and Lawrence Kasdan and Kinberg was popping up and Doug Chang and some of the other guys. Um, the fact that he's proven that he can get a project to the finish line and not just half-ass, but like he has, very good success, very good track record in Star Wars. So I think the fact that you're bringing in someone who can do that gives me more hope than had it been. I'm just pulling a name out of my ass here, Brad Bird, or another popular Hollywood director who was or producer who was coming on to take on a trilogy. Ben, I'm going to throw it back to you, man. What do you think this trilogy is, and do you believe that it's going to happen?
I mean, I'll take the last question first and say it's debatable if this happens. Considering Lucasfilm's track record with things, and I'll give them an addendum here that, as we previously established, they did not announce this. Okay, Kinberg acknowledged it. It was announced in the trades, and that's it. Lucasfilm has not announced things, but Lucasfilm has announced other things that have not seen the light of day. So this is actually, it's actually a count against it, that the fact that Lucasfilm has not announced it, because even things that do get announced do not actually come out sometimes.
Good for their PR team. They learned their lesson.
Yeah. That's I think they have, honestly. I think there has been less announcements. Like, we can pretty much guess that there is a new animated series in production at some point in there, but they haven't announced anything. And there's been other stuff that's been announced, and we know that Sean Levy is working on a movie, but I don't believe that's ever been officially announced. Sean Levy's talked about it. They've let him talk about it, but it actually hasn't happened. So it's up in the air. Apparently, it's early days. They're just still writing. Obviously, Kinberg is producing and writing, and he's going to be writing this. My theory is that they're looking for something to do after they're done with the Mangold movie and the Sharmino Bechonoi movie and Dave Filoni's movie. I think they're working on this as like they're just kind of like setting all these people up, going like, somebody do something, somebody write something, and give us a shooting script so we can make it. Like, I think they push Mandalorian Grogu through, because there's like, we have the pipeline for that. Mandalorian Grogu, we can do that. Just give it to Favreau and let him run with it, and here we are. I think it's still in production, but I think it's going to be happening, obviously. And obviously, it seems like Mangold's movie maybe next, because he's finishing up with the Bob thing. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. But I think this is far-flung idea of what could be happening in the far future. But I think they're still like, okay, it's been 5 years since Rise of Skywalker. By the time this comes out, it could be 10. As much as the sequel trilogy feels like it's something new.
You're making me feel old over here,
I
man.
know, but it's true. It's true. It blows my mind. But by the time this gets made, it could be the 10th anniversary of Rise of Skywalker. It could be, kids that weren't even alive, even born yet when the sequel trilogy was going, could be 10 years old or more by the time these movies come out. And it could be the time to, okay, let's continue the saga. It probably won't be the Skywalker saga, because they ended that, but it could be 10, 11, 12, the next Star Wars trilogy. I think they're going to be focusing in on, these are spin-off movies. They're kind of like Solo and Rogue One, but this is the saga. This is the big thing. This is the continuation of that, whether it's, involves Rey Skywalker or Finn or Poe or whatever else, or it could be hundreds of years in the future. I mean, I think they're going to lean into that episode 10. When we get that announcement, it'll be episode 10, just like episode 7. It'll be, this is the big episodes coming. I think that's what I think. Simon Kinberg is the caliber of a writer and producer you would get to helm something like that.
Yeah, I think it's almost guaranteed to be 10, 11, 12. And one of the reasons I point that out is Jeff Snyder, who's a Hollywood insider, who is he can be a little dickish at times, but it's hard to debate his track record in terms of being right, and far more often than not had that Star Wars was going the episode 10, 11, 12 route weeks ago. He had no information on it other than this is what he's hearing. And then sure enough, this comes out later, and he's since bounced back and said that even though the Hollywood Reporter and I guess some other places are denying 10, 11, 12, he thinks it is 10, 11, 12. But he also thinks there's almost no way these 3 movies are getting made, plus the Rey New Jedi Order. It doesn't make sense for all of that to go down. And I tend to agree. I don't think I hate to be I don't want to say I'm the bearer of bad news, but I think that there's been so many issues with the Rey movie between oh my God, what's his name?
Stephen Knight?
No,
the previous guy.
Yeah, Lost
I know you're
guy
talking about.
and He also did the Watchmen show. And
Lindelof. There you go. I
Lindelof,
got the
that's
name
it.
finally.
Lindelof and someone else were working on it, and they thought they were making progress, and then that didn't pan out, and then Stephen Knight got involved. I don't know if he was the next guy or someone else was involved, and the director's been involved. I know you and I had a back and forth with the director. I just feel like it's a really unfair position to put her in, as she hasn't directed many feature stuff, although she is an Academy Award winner in terms of documentaries, which I think is, really eye opening to wonder maybe what way they would go with that movie. But let's not forget that was supposed to be the first movie that we see back when they were announcing all those movies. And it's just been one problem after another. And it doesn't mean that that movie's not going to get made, but I could see them going, you know what, maybe we're going to go the trilogy route, and Ray will be the character that continues over into that trilogy, but everybody else will be new. Um, that's kind of the route I see them going. And I do question whether, Zach, I don't know what your take is on this, but like as Star Wars fans, I'm sure, and I'm just pulling this out of my ass. Let's say 2026 is Mandalorian and Grogu.
I hope you wipe it first.
2000 Let's say Christmas 2026 is Mangold, even though I don't think they're going to hit that date. Um, and then the 50th year anniversary one, that's the other thing I should add, is some of these places I've seen are reporting that it's a long way off. Jeff Snyder believes that they're gunning for 2027. He believes that they're gunning for the first Kinberg film to be the 50th anniversary film. And if that's the case, my guess is that's a big Star Wars celebration thing. Ben said when they announce it, it would be, or it could be announced as episode 10. That'd be a big place to do it, right? It's going to be the big headline coming out of Tokyo. But my question to you, Zach, is well, we can go see Mandalorian and Grogu, and then Dawn of the Jedi, and then episode 10, and then a Filoni movie, and then episode 11. I don't know if that works with like your mainstream generic audience in terms of jumping around that much. Do you think it can work, or do they need to be more? Does it need to be more tight than that?
I don't know, dude. I think if it's a good film, people are going to watch it. I think it needs to come across as something that people need to go see in theaters. It needs to be presented as something, oh, I have to go watch this. I think the only reason that Solo really suffered was because of the vitriol that episode 8 was suffering, and they did it in the summer instead of in the fall. People didn't have, and they had half as much time to recover. But Rogue One made $1 billion. So, like, you can have those intermittent movies that give a breather between the episodic films as long as you're creating something that is worth seeing in theaters and you're giving the other films time to breathe. I don't think Solo had the benefit of either of those, and that's really the only litmus test that we have to go on as far as the Star Wars franchise is concerned. We've either got Rogue One, which did awesome, or we've got Solo, which didn't do awesome, but was in the heart of controversy as well. So I guess by those standards, it's a toss up, but I'd like to believe that people who are interested in a Filoni movie will go see a Filoni movie. People who are interested in Dawn of the Jedi will go see Dawn of the Jedi if it's something worth seeing in theaters. So I think it's more about what you make and the people behind the project than it is the timing.
And jumping off of that really quick, I think we as fans tend to overthink things, as we always do. I think overthinking things in regards to timelines and jumping around, and we get it, but we're always worried about the layman, the people that are watching these movies, because you talk to people. Well, what happened after Force Awakens? We're going from Force Awakens to Rogue One, and it was very simple for us. Like, okay, they're doing this Force Awakens, this big movie, this continuation of the Skywalker saga, and then they're going to do Rogue One, which is this spin-off movie, and it's set before A New Hope and all this kind of stuff. And then you have people both online and in person going, well, is Jyn Erso, is she Rey's mom? Like, and you have these conversations, and you're like, oh God, people just don't get it. And you worry about people's retention and how things. But I think for the most part, people are just kind of along for the ride. They don't understand Star Wars. They know it's way deeper than they could possibly imagine it to be. But as you said, as long as it's good, they're kind of going to be like, okay, whatever. Well, okay, it's got Daisy Ridley in it. Okay, well, I remember her from those other movies, so it must be after those. Like, they'll get it from things. Or there's none of these characters I've ever seen before, so it doesn't matter where it's set. It's kind of things. And I think each movie kind of needs to, we've talked about this at length on other podcasts. I'm just like, every single piece of Star Wars media could be someone's first piece of Star Wars media. And it really needs to stand on its own. Obviously, if you're watching The Rise of Skywalker for the first time and you've never seen anything on Star Wars, you might be a tiny bit confused. But for the most part, the theory should work. I don't think it's without concern. I don't think it's something that shouldn't be discussed. I don't think it's something the Lucasfilm shouldn't keep in mind in regards to, releasing these movies and making sure people are things. And, it is a weird thing. But I think ultimately it needs to be good and it needs to be marketed well. And it doesn't need to be, mushed up next to other giant movies, which is, I think that was another Solo problem, which was it was so close to Infinity War and Deadpool and all this kind of stuff. I feel like they're doing this again with Mandalorian and Grogu. I'm really worried about that. They're putting it right close to Avengers Doomsday. I don't like that at all. Even though if there's any character that could go up against the return of Robert Downey Jr. to the MCU, it's Grogu. I have faith in that movie, but it's still their release schedule baffles me. But I think ultimately it really comes down to just making it good, making it engaging. People will just kind of go with it if they're enjoying it.
Yeah. I hear all of that. I do. I hadn't really considered Doomsday in the equation, if I'm being honest. The pop culture fan in me is already just planning on being in the seat for both of them. Like
Same. I mean,
I don't factor that into my consideration. I don't factor that into my budget or anything. Be like, okay, I've only got $15 to spend this month on movie theater tickets, so I either need to pick to go see Baby Yoda or I need to go pick to see Robert Downey Jr. I don't know which one it's going to be yet.
Like I'm going to see those movies, both of those movies, multiple times, and if it takes me having to sell my car to do it, I will do it. I'm sorry.
It reminds me of a time hop that showed up in my feed not too long ago. Apparently, when Doctor Strange first came out, the very first Doctor Strange, there were a lot of banging trailers that were happening before that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them was the new Pirates of the Caribbean movie. I want to say it's Dead Men Tell No Tales. And one of the other ones was Rogue One.
Oh wow!
And I want to say there might have been another trailer for Fast and Furious movie or maybe a Jurassic World movie or something like that. And I was like, I'll put it this way: I will pay $10 again to just go watch the trailers because that was the best part of that movie, anyways. I still am not a big fan of the first Doctor Strange movie, but I don't think I had a full appreciation for just how good the trailers were for what's coming next. There were some fan flippin-tastic trailer for amazing movies that were coming out in that time. And just think of what movie we're going to be seeing trailers for Mandalorian and Grogu for, trailers for Avengers Doomsday for, trailers for the new Jurassic World, was it Rebirth or something like that? We could end up seeing those trailers back to back to back in some future theater experience. So I am excited for that. I'm optimistic for that, at least.
Yeah, you'll probably have the Mandalorian Grogu trailer attached to or in and around when that Jurassic World movie comes out next year if it doesn't get delayed. So, so the turnaround time for that movie is insanely quick. But Here's hoping it's good. I want to take my kid to a dinosaur movie. So, uh, um,
Dude, I want to take my nephew. He'll be old enough to appreciate it.
so like, I'm driving in my car and I wanted to just hear other people's takes on the Simon Kinberg news. Like, I'm frustrated with myself for allowing myself to get excited, and the SW, you guys and us have been through a lot over the years. We started off on channel 1138. When I had my heart attack in May, one of the first things I did was listen to a Star Wars Underworld episode in the hospital. Ben and I've talked a bunch since then. Chris and I have spoken quite a bit, and it was just so refreshing to sit there. I was on about an hour drive and um, listen to a good chunk of that episode you guys just did with Din. And I think here's the problem for Star Wars fans is I was listening to that episode and I chose to listen to that episode as if the trilogy is going to happen, as if Simon Kinberg is going to get this thing done and get it across the finish line. Um, and if I have to say one way or another if it's going to happen, I do think it's more likely it'll happen than it doesn't because of it's him involved. But I think it's so much easier to talk about things and get excited for things and listening to other people talk about things and share their passion for things if you think it's going to happen. And I believe the majority of you guys on that panel that day thought it was going to happen, but Chris thought it might not. Um, and it's just like the not getting stuff, the constantly having stuff getting delayed or canceled or status quo on projects that most people know are dead in the water really sucks the excitement out of the diehard portion of the fandom. Um, I know that you said, Zach, PR wise, um, that it was, maybe they're learning from their mistakes, but I got to be honest. After Simon Kinberg came out and acknowledged it, I was kind of hoping for the big StarWars.com, just acknowledge it, put the machine behind it, put the Disney machine behind it. And I get why they're probably not doing that because they've announced so much and there's so much of it that's probably not going to happen. Um, and also they need stuff for Celebration next year, right? So, um, but it would be so much easier to get into listening to any Star Wars podcast or any Star Wars YouTube channel and hear people talk passionately about Star Wars things if you knew they were going to happen. Like, we know the Mandalorian and Grogu's going to happen. It would take some sort of otherworld disaster for that thing to not come out. And the Mangold thing seems like it's really progressed in the last little while. But how important for you, anyways, the both of you as fans, is it that we start to get to a point where we can expect things to come? And I get it; it may never be like when they first announced I believe it was 6 projects they first announced, the 5 we got in the Boba Fett movie. But like, we basically got everything that we were told about back then. Now it feels like we get maybe 10% of the things we're told about. Um, just how does that weigh on you guys as fans, as content creators? Like, for me, I really had to put myself in the perspective while listening to you guys talk about it that, hey, this thing is going to happen. I need to believe that it's going to happen to really be engaged in this conversation. Not that you guys weren't entertaining on the SWU. You are. It just gets disheartening after a while when we talk about future projects and then years and years and years pass and there's just no sight of them. I'll shut up and stop rambling.
For me, I think it's this thing where I really do like the cynical part of me, which is a pretty big part of me, if I'm being honest, is looking at all these going like, I don't think, and it's become a joke on the podcast and just a joke in Star Wars fandom. It's like, I won't get excited about any of these things until I'm sitting in the theater waiting for it to the Lucasfilm logo to come up, because that's just how cynical we've all become and how things. But I do really hope that all these movies, in some form or fashion, do happen. I think the Sherman Obey-Chinoy, the James Mangold, the Dave Filoni movie, and now this Simon Kinberg thing. It less so because they haven't announced it, but I still I want them to fall through, because I think this is Hollywood, and unfortunately, if you've listened to interviews, done research, if you listen to people talk about this, you know that there's tons of heartbreaks that happen in Hollywood. There's tons of these things. This happens all the time. Stuff will be trapped in development hell for years. Stuff will get going, and someone will write it, and they'll be all set to go, and then nothing happens. And then it falls through, or someone gets kicked off a project, or whatever else. There's been amazing things that have almost happened. I think it was, with tons of Superman movies are just like that. And so, I think we've been given too much of a peek behind the curtain. I think we've been given too much information. Some of it is kind of because we want to, because we read the trades. We want to know how the sausage is made, how the Star Wars is made, and that comes with some heartbreak, and knowing that, oh, this thing happens and it's not going to happen now. It sucks. I will give Lucasfilm a break. I truly believe that investors meeting, whatever you're going to call it, I can't remember things. That thing that happened where Kathleen Kennedy came out and we're like, oh, we're going to do a droid story and Rangers of the New Republic and all these things. I truly don't blame that on her. I don't blame that on Lucasfilm. I think Disney really came down and said, you need to come up with a bunch of different projects so we can announce them at this thing. I think that's what happened. Doesn't take the blame, make them completely blameless, but I think it definitely was a Disney. It felt like Disney was like, we got this Disney Plus thing. We got to put a bunch of stuff out there. And now as we know, the streaming bubble has burst. They're not trying to make as much now. And that's why those projects have gone the way of the dodo. But I think now they made a point to go to Celebration and announce these new movies. I think, okay, now you have to follow through with them. You have to prove, because I'm seeing the Twitter or wherever you're going on social media, Blue Sky now is the favorite one now. I see the takes. I see the takes of people going like, oh, Lucasfilm announced the new imaginary movie that'll never happen. I think that was one that I saw maybe yesterday. And I'm like, look, I'm not the most negative Star Wars fan. I'm pretty positive, but I can't even go like, they're not wrong. To be cynical is to be with eyes and a brain in this period of time. So I think to build confidence back, they really need to put those things out, and also maybe stop telling us things. Just wait until you're shooting to announce things. Other than that, we don't need to know. Don't get ahead of your announcements. Which maybe that's what they're doing with the Simon Kinberg thing. Maybe they're like, we'll see how this goes. Maybe they're not going to announce it. Yeah, I'm going to shut up now. Zach, take over.
Oh man, I've got all kinds of thoughts. Number one being, I think Ben hit the nail on the head about to be cynical is to be alive. Especially in the world of pop culture and just entertainment in general. I think I read a phrase, or I heard somebody say on a TikTok or something, that they like being cynical because worst case scenario, they're right. Best case scenario, they're pleasantly proven wrong.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what it is. Like, you're sitting around going, I don't think this is going to happen. And then when it doesn't happen, you're like, I didn't think this was going to happen. But then if it's the other way around, you're like, oh, I didn't think this was going to happen. Okay, I'm pleasantly surprised now. So I get it. And I totally get where talking Star Wars is coming from when saying I'm on board, but until we see anything official like a trailer or something, my expectations are low. I think that's fair. I think that's fair until we actually see some material, like Sean said on StarWars.com, or until we see something that gets officially announced. Then it's worth it to just kind of take a pause and look at it with that skeptic's eye until we know for certain. I will also say, doing my Zach the Voice stuff, doing local sports announcements and sports related PR for some high schools in the area, I have grown to appreciate the importance of the art of timing. Um, I do multiple broadcasts, and I have people that do one broadcast while I go do another, and I have to let people know on my page. This week on Zap, we are going to have this game on Facebook, and we will have this game on YouTube. And I have to do it every Sunday or Monday in order to let people know for certain this is going to happen. This is where you can find it. That is essential, pertinent information. But my gosh, we didn't even get the official date for Andor season 2 until like 2 or 3 days ago. We all knew that Andor season 2 was happening. We didn't know when the hell it was happening. We all knew that it was supposed to happen. We all knew what the timeline for the episodes was going to be like. We all knew a whole bunch of details that were attached to it. But it took like a little blurb that was underneath the Andor season 1 title that says season 2 coming April, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, oh, hell, I guess this is happening now. So, like, the essential information has to be released at a time when the agency feels like it needs to be released. I need to release that broadcast information so that the parents and grandparents and whatever know where to tune in to the football game. Star Wars is not on that same type of timeline where you have to keep people up to date every week. They follow a timeline that says when we feel that this information is worth distributing to the masses, then that's when we're going to do it. And so there is a delicate balance in being a PR person in releasing information and withholding information. And you have to know when is the appropriate time for that. And I'm not saying that every agency gets it right 100% of the time. And I think Kinberg announcing it from a personal POV might have been a mistake, and he probably got in trouble for that behind the scenes. But the fact that Lucasfilm and Disney and nobody else has backed up what he said means that they weren't ready for that announcement yet. And until they're actually ready to make that announcement, we're not going to hear anything from them. And so I guess I just caution patience in that regard. Like, it could be Celebration, or it could be just a random announcement that shows up at some other interval like what we got with Andor. It could end up happening when we least expect it. But I think from a PR point of view, they're focusing on Skeleton Crew, they're focusing on Andor, they're focusing on Celebration, and kind of promoting those types of things over somebody's comments in an interview on the internet. An entity as big as Star Wars doesn't necessarily have to respond to every review, every critique, every interview, every rumor. If they did that, then I don't know if the importance of their announcements means as much anymore. If they're that generous with their information, I think there's a delicacy to withholding and revealing things as well. And so we just kind of have to wait for their timeline and make do with what information we have in the meantime.
I'd love to see things get streamlined a little bit more. Again, not trying to be negative, Nancy, but like when I hear about like the Lando movie, I'm sorry, I don't believe there's going to be a Lando movie. I don't see Lucasfilm and Disney spending 150 $200 million on a Lando movie and pushing that out there. And it's not to say that they can't do another movie that involves Donald Glover as Lando. But it's like I just don't see that movie happening. With the Kinberg and the Charmaine movie there, the one that was a Lindelof one and a night one, like it's also hard because Daisy Ridley again has went and said something in the media about, to expect something imminently, and the only thing that's come since then is this Kinberg stuff, right? So it's like it'd be nice to know what is still good and what is still not. Like, does anyone actually think the Ryan Johnson trilogy is still happening? And I'll say this as a guy who actually loves the Knives Out movies. I think they've both been just superb, and like Glass Onion was just another level shit that he was doing. I would love to see him tackle something else in Star Wars, but I don't think that's happening. I don't think Rogue Squadron is is happening anymore. I don't think the Lando movie's happening. I'm sure there's other movies that have been announced that I'm just not remembering. I think the Filoni one has to happen. Mandalorian Grogu kind of has to happen. I could see Dawn of the Jedi. Honestly, I would have said that one was unlikely until recent months, where it seems like the pre-production on that seems to be going quite well, or wherever Mangold is in the scripting phase to think that they might shoot sometime next year. Um, it'd be nice to know this is what we're working on, not 10 or 12 different possibilities, but rather here you're getting Mandalorian and Grogu, you're getting the Filoni follow-up movie to it, and we're doing this Kinberg thing, and maybe Dawn of the Jedi, and then everything else doesn't need to be mentioned for who knows how long, because it's hard to know what to get excited for and if it's going to come. And I do think they have a track record of announcing things too quickly that don't pan out. Like, I'm sure they would have loved to make movies with the Game of Thrones guys, and I'm sure they would have loved to not have to spend twice the budget with Lord and Miller's, mess ups on Solo. And
Right.
there's so many other people that have left. Josh Trank and the girl from Wonder Woman. I keep forgetting her name.
Patty Jenkins.
Patty Jenkins, and there's just so many of them that, like, I want to be able to tune into the Star Wars Underworld next year in, I don't know, June 14th next year, and the guys are you know talking news, and they're talking about um, you know how the Kinberg movie is, or the Kinberg movies are well into development, and they have a cinematographer attached. And I'm assuming having one guy overseeing the three movies means we will likely see different directors on the movies, but we'll have to wait and see on that one.
Damn,
um,
Ben, y'all are moving your episode to Flag Day?
um,
Saturday, June 14th, fans, you heard it here first. Star Wars Underworld goes to Flag Day.
so
As good as any.
here's hoping Celebration, which I believe is in April, right?
Yes.
Whoever's spending the egregious amounts of money it's going to cost you to go all the way to Tokyo to be a part of that.
Not
I
me.
hope it works out for you, and I hope we get some really solid concrete stuff come out of there.
Yeah, it's ultimately it's funny how we all are, or at least I am. Like, I am just beyond fascinated with the Hollywood process, the creative process, how movies are made. Like, it's just like, the only thing I think that's more interesting than some movies, like even bad movies, can be interesting because, oh, how did that get made? How did you do that? Why did that happen? And I think, or like some good movies that had really bad productions. Um, and we want to know as much as possible about the creative process. We want to know everything possible. But the downside to that is, when you know everything, it starts to sour yourself, because you start learning about, oh yeah, there's some real bad people behind the scenes. There's some real a-holes that work on these movies that do horrible things. And then all the studio stuff, and just looking at George Lucas's history as someone who wanted to make a movie but was tired of the Hollywood system. He still thinks studio executives are idiots, and he just wanted to make his movie, and all this kind of stuff. And for a lot of that, I think I agree with him. I think he's right. I think a lot of this stuff is ultimately, we want to know so much, but maybe we don't want to know so much. I think maybe that's what we're learning. is maybe it's okay to just be in the dark for a little while. Because I think some of the official narratives, like you mentioned, the Ryan Johnson movie, I think that's completely true. I think the whole narrative that they hired Ryan Johnson to do a trilogy, and then he just had this Knives Out thing take off, and then he got a deal with Netflix, and he's doing that now. I'm like, that makes sense. I think, look at Last Jedi. You don't have to love it or hate it. That was a smooth production. That movie was just smooth sailing. They got it out there. They announced his trilogy before Last Jedi even came out. That's how long that was for the record. And like they were so enamored of him, and they loved him. They had so much confidence in that movie. And depending on who you talk to, it's either the worst thing or the best thing ever created. But ultimately, they loved him. He loved them. They wanted to make a movie, and then stuff happened. And I think part of the problem is that Lucasfilm was mortified by the reaction to that movie. I think they've lost a lot of confidence. I think Lucasfilm's biggest issue still to this day is a lack of confidence, a lack of stick to your guns, regardless of what the fans say. Because I'm a fan. I wish they would listen to me sometimes, but ultimately, I don't want them to. I wish they would just make a thing, and even if I don't like it, stick to it and stand behind it. And I think that's another problem that we're seeing here. But ultimately, it's just the way it goes. It's unfortunate. We're seeing the behind the scenes, and it's not pretty. I just hope that they can start turning things around to build fans' trust back, not the weirdos on YouTube that are screaming about things that we all know that they scream about. We don't care, but the actual fans like us that are like, guys, what are you doing? What's going on?
Yeah, obviously I want the best for the franchise, and whatever that means, then we'll take it. I was obviously someone who was vocal. Frankly, I was vocal against Rogue One and The Last Jedi after the releases, but I was pretty positive about Solo and very positive about The Force Awakens. And hindsight, and we're many years removed now. Rogue One might be the best movie they've made in the Disney era. I'm not sure, but like it's way, way up there. Tony Gilroy, I mean, Gareth Edwards deserves credit too, but Tony Gilroy, just look at Andor and what this guy's capable of doing with character moments. But even The Last Jedi, like now, all these years later, I think as much as I don't necessarily like the representation of Luke Skywalker in the movie, I think my biggest issue with the movie is just tone. If the tone was changed a bit and wasn't so bright and darkened up a bit, I might appreciate it more. But I've definitely come around on the movie quite a bit since I first saw it. To me, The Rise of Skywalker is the example that I would give when you don't stand behind something and you change things and to try to appease a fan base, and you get this sort of, for Rise of Skywalker lovers out there, but like you get this very messy, lopsided movie that looks more like a Transformers movie at times with, let's just see how many spaceships we can cram in there at the end, and none of it really makes any, geographical sense, but here we go. I would love for them to stand behind whatever they're doing. I think it'd be good for them, but I also think realistic expectations in terms of what to expect need to be set. Like, let's be real, they are probably never doing The Force Awakens again as long as we live in terms of a box office performance. It could happen, but it's very unlikely. That's, 10 plus years away from a Star Wars movie being released, but also realistically, people have been waiting since 1983 to see the big three together. That was a big like event thing. Um, what is a successful Star Wars movie at the box office? I think I heard you guys talking on your last show on the SWU. This is the last thing I want to bring up before we go, and I'll go to Zach first, though. The Mandalorian and Grogu is set for spring 2026. Like, no reason they can't hit it. They're either conflicting reports, but they're either done filming or almost done filming. No reason they can't hit that date. They should be able to hit it and have a bunch of cushion as well. But is that actually going to be a movie, or is it going to be 4 episodes of The Mandalorian season 4? And I'm telling you, those are two different things. I'm sorry, but they are. If you go see a feature film in a movie theater, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, a 3-act play where, if it feels like we're just getting condensed episodes of a season rather than it being a movie, and we're pretty sure they've taken what their plans were for season 4. Obviously, they've had ample time to add in other things, and there's rumors that Thrawn could be in it, and as a minor part, and obviously we're getting Mando and Grogu, and we've seen Zeb, but like, what makes a successful Star Wars movie? Ben, it might have been you that I heard mention that you think it might just feel like a few episodes. It was either you or someone else, but Zach, does that work for you? Like, if it's just going to feel like 4 episodes of season 4 of The Mandalorian as opposed to a 2.5 hour movie, like, I got to be honest, for me, it's got to feel like a movie. Otherwise, it's a cash grab.
I'm a little torn on this because isn't that essentially what the Clone Wars was when they put it in theaters? It
Yeah,
was
Basically.
it was an arc. It was an arc surrounding Jabba the Hutt's son, and it was a collection of episodes, and it introduced people into the franchise and gave them an idea of the animation style and the characters and what to expect and how to expect it. And that ended up being a launching board into quite possibly one of the best pieces of Star Wars that we've gotten in our generation. Like, I don't mean that lightly, but the Clone Wars was generational and
Yeah.
and paradigm shifting. And it all started from that one film that was a collection of episodes. So I don't know if I hate the idea of putting a few Mando episodes into it, as long as it's done right, as long as it's one cohesive story, as long as it's telling what it needs to tell in the same adventurous manner that the show has always done, then yeah, I'm paying the 10, $12 to go watch it. I'm an AMC member, so I'm not paying a damn thing. I've got the subscription service. But yeah, I will go take time out of my day to go watch 3 or 4 episodes on the big screen. I think I'm okay with that. I would like it to be a movie format. I think they've had enough time to make it a movie format, but I don't think that would be one of my complaints if it ends up not being that way. I think I would rather take issue with the storytelling. I would rather take issue with the pieces, the sets, the writing, the character development. I would look at the nuts and bolts more than the structure. So personally, I don't think it would bother me that much. I would like it that way, but it's not going to be a deal breaker for me.
Agree with what you said. Sorry if I can jump in here for a second, Ben. In terms of the Clone Wars and how it did work as like a launch pad for the series, I seem to recall fans really coming on board around like the season 3 and really being sold around then. But to me, you're not doing that this time. As far as I know, we're not going to get any more Mando after this. I don't think the Mandalorian TV show is popping back up. So the last thing I want to see this be is a $120 million ad for Disney Plus. I want to see it act and function as its own movie. Obviously, though, you need to. The way filmmaking works is there needs to be something in that movie in the first act that some of us might find repetitive, that makes people who haven't seen The Mandalorian caught up with the story. Like, there will absolutely be something in that first act of the movie that catches everybody up with where we are. You will not need to have seen 3 seasons of The Mandalorian to go see this movie. I would be stunned if that were the case. Obviously,
Yeah,
more beneficial for those that do.
there'll be some person in a tavern that's talking to him as the marshal and being like, "So how long has that kid been following you around now? 6 months, 12 months?" And be like, 2 years. It's like 2 whole years. I can't believe that he's put up with you this long. Some bullshit like that. Like there's gonna be some kind of exposition. There always is.
Yeah, like I don't know, what they're going to be doing, because I think the rumor as it stands is that they were going to make season 4, and they kind of fast tracked this season 4 being into the Mandalorian Grogu. This was kind of, that's what I truly think. My theory is also because like they were desperate for a movie. Like they are saying what we've been saying, which is just like, wow, and it's been 5 years and there hasn't been a Star Wars movie. What the hell? Like, what's going on? Like, you had a good run going there, and now there's nothing. I think they're like, Disney executives, especially now that the streaming bubble has burst, they're like, we get something in theaters. We need something. And then taking the Mandalorian and Grogu, their two most marketable characters, and doing that in the movie, like, makes sense. I'd say when you put it like that, but like, yes, the idea of just like, oh, it's just another episode of The Mandalorian, it doesn't sound as appealing. I get why that can be maybe a problem. I also like, I think The Mandalorian, there's some episodes that I would put up next to any of the Star Wars films, rivaling them in quality, in writing, in everything. From The Marshal to The Jedi to, The Rescue, all episodes that I think are absolutely phenomenal, that if you just magically turn them into movies, they belong on the big screen. I wish I had the chance to see them on the big screen because they're just that good.
Yep.
And I think,
Yep.
So from that perspective, it's like, if it is just another episode of The Mandalorian, but it's a really good episode, then maybe that's not a problem. Obviously, I do want it to be special. One of my big problems with The Mandalorian season 3 was the whole issue of just like, it felt like the show was starting to double down on certain things and starting to like, oh, you've got Din and he has the Darksaber and maybe they're going to do something with this. And then it just didn't go anywhere. He just gave it away, and it kind of signaled to me that the show was kind of running in place. It wasn't willing to progress the characters to the next phase. They were just like, okay, they're here. Din is always going to be in this area. He's never going to get to a place where he could be King of Mandalore or be taking his helmet off, more than once per season. He didn't take it off at all for season 3. And it was frustrating. And I think I want the Mandalorian and Grogu to, want them to inject something special into it to make it feel special. I think Favreau's doing that, because the Marshal just celebrated like 2-3 years anniversary the other day, and there's a lot of clips going around, and like, that episode hits hard. And that's Favreau's episode. That's the one episode he directed. That's a phenomenal episode. It is a cinematic episode. And if he can bring that energy, I think people are highly underestimating how good this movie can be. I'm not saying it can't also be bad, because it could be. It could be a mediocre episode of The Mandalorian. But I have high hopes that Favreau, being that he's a very experienced director, him helming this and hopefully having Filoni kind of in the corner helping him write the thing, is a really good combo.
I'm hoping Favreau can bring Timothy Oliphant back with him too. That would be at the end of the day, your movie still needs some star power, right? Like, I know they got Sigourney Weaver on board,
Right.
And we know Pedro Pascal will be there for a minimal amount of time with the mask off at some point. But from what I understand, he hasn't filmed very much on the movie. Dude's busy. Dude's probably the most in-demand dude in Hollywood right now.
For real, yeah.
Like, he's doing everything, it feels like. So, like, you got Sigourney Weaver, essentially, at this point. You need to sell some tickets, and I just have to assume that Timothy Oliphant's going to be involved in this, and some others that we haven't heard of as of yet, as well.
Yeah,
But I like. Go ahead.
No, I'm thinking, I'm going through all the names, like who could show up. Like, I'm like, could they get Tim Morrison back? That'd be great. I feel like people like Amy Sedaris and all those guys, they'll probably be like Carson Teva is a shoe-in. Like he shows up in everything. But I also hope there's some new faces and some new things that I hope to like start expanding it. Because I do want season 4. I want that to happen. I want the show to continue. But if this isn't going to be the finale, then maybe there's something big's going to happen, because seasons 2 and 3 felt like endings, big endings, but they weren't. And season 3 specifically undoes a lot of the stuff that season 2 ending did. And like how's it going to deal with this in the movie? That's what I'm curious about.
I do wonder how much is left of like this air storytelling, right? Like we have the movie, we have Ahsoka season 2, and we have the Filoni movie. Yeah. That might be it. Like Skeleton Crew's technically in there, but we don't know how much it crosses over, if at all. And it's like, so if that's the case, like if that's really all you have for the Mandalorian era is those 3 projects, like, doesn't Ezra kind of have to be on the board for the Mando movie, possibly? I mean, Zeb's in it.
Well,
it's funny you said that. So weird, right? Like,
I'm pretty sure Iman Esfandi was like, "Hey, I'm going to be doing some Star Wars filming, like soon," and then the Mandalorian Grogu was filming like right now. So people were like, what does that mean?
Like, yeah, they chose to bring him back at the end of Ahsoka, right? And like another bigger problem in terms of Hollywood in general is like, I'm actually really excited for an Ahsoka season 2 and the Filoni movie and Mandalorian and Grogu, but like it takes so long to get there. It's one thing waiting a couple years for a movie, but when we're waiting 2+ years for TV series, it becomes a bit much, right? And,
well, it is. It's like, and that's the whole point. Again, we've gone from TV being this low budget, low quality thing that they kick out every so often. They were able to kick out, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was like this thing that came about, and I really liked the show, but like it was definitely a low budget version of the MCU, and then it wasn't really even part of the MCU by the end of it. But like ultimately, it wasn't trying to be those movies, but it was ultimately a contrast to the MCU in regards to quality wise. But now they have all of these new series that are on par with the movies. They look like the movies. Some of them look better than some of the movies. But now there's such the lead time because it's 8, there's 9 episodes for Agatha. Like, it takes a lot. It takes like 2 or 3 years minimum to get a movie made from script to post-production. And then you're talking about adding so many hours. Like, it's actually a miracle that they can manage to produce 5 to 10 episodes of a TV show of that quality in such a short period of time. You look at like Stranger Things, like that's still like one of the best looking shows on TV. It's taken a decade to make 5 seasons, but that's the price you pay for things. Otherwise, they could do it in less time, but it wouldn't look that good. It wouldn't look like a movie. And so like you have to kind of parse it out, being like, okay, do we want? Because now all people are also very lamenting the fact that we're just getting 8 to 10 episodes. We're not getting the 22 episodes that we used to get. And I get it, but also they won't look like that. You have to pick one of these things. It has to be big budget, small lead time. You can't have all these things, otherwise, they will be, because they're already like the VFX artists they're basically killing them with these very short windows of lead time on the projects. So it's insane, but it's also kind of the way it has to be.
Final thoughts here, guys, as we wrap up the show. Zach, you're a big a dino guy, Jurassic Park, Jurassic World guy. think Ben is too, to an extent. Had a lot of chatter in my family and part of my friend group about what is it, Jurassic World Reborn or Rebirth or whatever it's going to be
Rebirth
next year with Scarlett Johansson and company.
Yeah.
What's your just gut feeling tell you about that production? Are we excited for it? Like it's kind of, I found it weird that they're sticking with Jurassic World. I thought it would have been Jurassic something else. Like it doesn't really feel like the beginning of another trilogy as it does kind of a spin-off movie. Where are our expectations for that, and will any of Chaos Theory matter towards the TV show?
I hope it does. I hope it does. I really sincerely think that Camp Cretaceous and Chaos Theory is one of the best things to have happened to the Jurassic franchise. It revitalized it. It gave some great context. It served as a Jurassic version of the Clone Wars, essentially, which nobody really knew they needed, but then discovered that it made the franchise so much better. And I would love to see somebody make the jump to the big screen. I think it would be great to unify the franchises like that. Um, Personally, I think Darius is the best option for that. I don't know if you're going to be able to do it with every single character, but if Darius can make the jump and be a character that aids Scarlett Johansson's character in some capacity, I think that would be really cool. So I think that would be the clincher for me. That would make the movie even better than whatever anticipation I've already got for it. I think the Jurassic World title is still appropriate because dinosaurs are loose and it really is a Jurassic World now. It's a Jurassic planet. There were talks of Jurassic City, but then the plot kind of took it outside of the city and they had to kind of go back to what they originally called it. So there were options, and this was just the least evil of the options based on the story that they're telling. But um, overall, I think the timeline is really fast. I think that's the thing I'm most nervous about is that they're pumping it out this quickly. I would have given it another year to get all of the CGI and stuff taken care of. I don't know if they're using AI programs to help speed up the process or something. I don't know, but they went from shooting to post production to release in like under a year or something, which is a super fast turnaround for a Jurassic movie. So that's the one thing that I'm worried about, but everything else I'm kind of on board for. You've got a big name like Scarlett Johansson who's never been part of the franchise, and you look at her and you go, "Oh, of course she would be in something like this," just the way Chris Pratt was. So I'm on board with just about everything else that's going on with it, but I do worry about what the quality of the film is going to look like based on their release timeline.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned like people from the Chaos Theory series potentially showing up in the movies, which is I guess is still a possibility. Um, like like one thing that I would like one possibility is just like you have Brooklyn, who was originally voiced by Jenna Ortega, who was not as well known when she was doing it for Camp Cretaceous, now is this huge star that has led now multiple franchises. She was in the Scream thing, she was in Beetlejuice. Now she is someone who could potentially like lead a Jurassic World movie. She's a big enough name that you could put Jenna Ortega in the lead with someone like Scarlett Johansson and no one would bat an eye because she's that big of a name. But she's not voicing Brooklyn anymore. She's bowed out of the role because she's so big and she doesn't want to. Just not worth her time anymore.
Right. Right.
And now we have another actress. I forget her name, but now I'm thinking
Kirsten Kelly.
Kirsten Kelly, who Brooklyn missing an arm, also Kirsten Kelly missing an arm. She shares a disability with the character. So you're just like, well, how do you do that? Well, why wouldn't you just have her do the character if she showed up in live action? Because that makes sense. I don't know. It's weird. I would be shocked if they did that, but I think Star Wars has set a precedent. I think a lot of people, James Gunn has talked about how in the DCU, his universe, he's going to be like pushing for like, if someone is cast in live action or animation, it will automatically be assumed that they will play that character in the other medium. Similar to what Star Wars has tried to do, even though Star Wars has sometimes done it and other times not. But
Well, I mean, Anthony Mackie is voicing Captain America in the new season of What If.
exactly, and Marvel's kind of closer to Star Wars in their guy. Sometimes they'll get the actors, sometimes they'll just get a sound alike. Like they didn't like Tony Stark was all up in those What If things, but Robert Downey Jr. never lifted a finger to get in those things, and the guy that got to do Tony Stark in that sounded great. So sometimes it can work, sometimes it cannot. But I think the Jurassic people, they have to know that they have something special there. That Chaos Theory is really building into something big, and I think it would be cool to cross them over somehow.
Well, if you're interested in hearing more Chaos Theory discussions, check it out on IPC, available on most podcatchers. Fellas, thanks for doing this tonight. It was fun to sit down and geek out about Game of Thrones and Star Wars and a little bit about Jurassic World there at the end. My final gripe for the night would be this. I hear people bitch about source material all the time. Star Wars is a fantasy series. You can find it in your science fiction section of your Barnes and Nobles or your local Indigo bookstore. You have Hayden Christensen, which most people, like in the role. You have Ewan McGregor, who wants to do more. Find a way to do more with the people that are still with us at an age where they can perform. It's fantasy. If you do a Darth Vader story post Return of the Jedi, it's okay if randomly Anakin Skywalker is resurrected 100 years from now and is burdened with training a new group of Jedi.
The
It's
Force is a pathway
like
to many powers. Some consider to be unnatural.
I don't like the box they paint themselves into sometimes. Like, we can't recast the big three. It's like,
Oh yeah,
it should be more
so
about the characters than the performers. And like, they have a bunch of outs. It's just whether they want to take them or not.
Yeah, it's like it's like with Solo. Not to gripe on this more, but like Solo is a movie that like it failed in a variety of ways. Like it underperformed, and then Kathleen Kennedy, and as much as the respect I have for her, she's like, "Oh yeah, what we learned from that was that we shouldn't recast. People don't like recast." I'm like, "No, it wasn't the fact that you made the movie freaking twice." That you fired the directors halfway through, that you put it up against one of the biggest movies of the century, and it underperformed. That wasn't the problem, but Alden Ehrenreich, who everyone agrees did a great job as the character, he's the problem. Like, come on.
I liked Alden. I had no problem with his performance. So,
I liked
anyways,
him in
fellas,
Cocaine Bear.
he was hilarious in Cocaine Bear.
He was great.
Where can everybody find you guys? What do you got going on next?
I'll try to be quick. I got too many things to promote. I will say, you can follow me at Ben Hart with no E on all the socials. I am on Blue Sky now for some stupid reason. Okay, all I'm saying is I'm putting my foot down now. I've jumped from like 5 different social media apps. I'm tired of Twitter. I get it. But we all gotta agree on one place and go to it. Okay, I'm tired of this whole jumping around thing. So I'm on Blue Sky. I'm staying there for the rest of my life. And follow at the SW and at Culture Slate.
Yeah, my stuff's pretty across the board. It's that username that's been on the lower third here, Zach the Voice. Doing a lot of high school football in the area. So if you like me and you like football, then tune in this Friday. We'll have a game on the Facebook page. We'll have another one on the YouTube page, and yeah, looking forward to covering those teams for the duration of their playoff run. I am in talks to possibly do some other sports and some other stuff during this winter, but it's very early stage, so I'm not making any other announcement outside of that. But if you want to find out more, then just go follow me. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever. I'm not on Blue Sky yet, probably will be eventually, but most of the major socials, you can find me there.
I thought Blue Sky was some tongue-in-cheek thing Ben was joking about earlier, but like, I'm really starting to realize how much I'm out of the social media game, despite still
Look.
attempting to do content.
It's got like
Speaking-
25 million users on it now or something like
Look,
that.
speaking as someone who does social media for a living, you're not missing anything, okay? You're not. It's just too much.
I agree, guys. Well, we'll have to do this again soon. Maybe do some trivia again. God knows how much Zach loves that.
Get my ass handed to me.
Look,
Yeah,
just don't pit us against each other. Don't do that to us again, okay? I want to
Nah,
remain
here's-
friends with this
here's
guy,
the deal.
okay? I don't want to do that again.
I will come up with Office trivia, Parks and Rec trivia, and Pixar trivia that will stump the shit out of both of you, and then I get to laugh at you getting your asses handed to each other.
Here's the thing with
I'd
Star
be
Wars
screwed
trivia
on half
is
that.
you can stomp me with Star Wars trivia. Just stick to video games and books, okay? Just stick to video games and books. You will make me look like an idiot, okay? It's very easy.
Well, I appreciate you guys doing this. This is a lot of fun. Check out the Star Wars Underworld Thursdays. When's the next episode of IPC, guys? Do you know? And what
I
is it?
literally-
Do we know what it's
At
about?
some point in the next month.
I literally do need to get with him and figure out when his next available recording day is. So,
Look, beyond that,
TBD.
Look, we did like a 3.5-hour episode the other day. Okay, we did like more
did.
than a month's worth of
We
podcasting.
did.
So I'm not jumping at the idea of just like we gotta do another episode. Like, no, you guys got enough. You got plenty to live off of for a while. Okay, we'll get to it when we get to it.
That chaos theory talk was a great one. So go find that on your podcatcher in the meantime, and then we'll have another one sometime before the holidays are done.
Yeah.
We'll have at
Awesome.
least one. We'll have at least one more before the end of the year. I'll promise you that much.
Sounds great, man. Like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications to all. Check us out again tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, when Fandom Empire Live returns. For Ben and Zach, I'm Sean. Good night.